Hey guys, thank you for joining me today on the AgentXcel podcast. And today we've got a really cool guest. His name is David Pittiglio, and he is with Streamlined Business Solutions. He owns a bookkeeping company, and I wanted to bring him on because he handles my bookkeeping for not only my real estate company, but also my rental properties that I own. And we have a conversation that I think is just needed in our industry. And really not just our industry, but I just think in life, just money is something that I think that a lot of people just don't understand. And I think that David, I wanted to bring him on because he talks about some frameworks and how he, looks at the financials of a company and kind of the first steps that he would do if you don't have a bookkeeper. And I just really hope you guys enjoy the show because we're talking about finances. And I think that could help a lot of people out if they learned how to handle those better. So enjoy the show. Hey, everybody. Today on the AgentXcel podcast, we have our guest, David Pittiglio. How you doing, David?
Good morning. I'm awesome. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. I thank you so much for jumping on the podcast today. I just to kind of give the listeners a backstory. I mean, it was about 2.5 years ago that I was in some need of some bookkeeping. Always really liked doing my spreadsheets, keeping track of my numbers. It was kind of a fun thing for me. I just kind of that person who likes to track things, and I get, that's where I get my energy from. And it was about 2.5 years ago where it got to a point that it turned into something that was fun and got me to where I was. But then as I started getting the team and growing, I just realized that it wasn't going to be a benefit to me doing it anymore. I reached out to one of my good buddies, Kevin, and he told me to get in contact with you. And that's when we got introduced, and you really changed. You've changed the way I do business, and I really appreciate that because I had been doing business probably like 15 years before that, and I kind of knew the P&L. I knew a basic P&L and things like that. But you guys doing this for me and taking care of my company, I'm so thankful for your service that you offer to people.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So if you could have just for a few minutes, just say like who you are, how you got into owning this company, and how would you describe your company? I mean, I consider it like a bookkeeping a company and somebody who helps me with my finances and things like that. But tell me about you and how you would explain your company.
Yeah. Thanks. So I created the company back in 2009, back when everything kind of went under, and really focused on the REO part of real estate. And I was really good at it. And I'll get more into this probably a little bit later, but what I realized is I had to figure out the end result first and then back into how or what was necessary to help business owners understand their financials. So essentially reverse engineering kind of our process as to what does the end result really look like. And spent many years trying to perfect that and work on it. And, today we have a staff of 50 employees. We service over 900 clients all over the nation. And it's been a great ride, really, really fun. We've learned a lot, and we've blessed a lot of people as well as ourselves, just trying to figure out how to become better business owners. And if I had to sum it up, I would just say that we simply keep score for you, right? I mean, that's our responsibility to create a set of financial statements for tax preparation eventually. But every month until that point, there's an opportunity to course correct your business, look at the scorecard, which I would call the income statement or the financial statements, and learn from it and make better business decisions and make some failures, but then rebound from them because you understood what you did. And so, today we could sum it up as bookkeeping. Accountant is a very loosely utilized term. It's like saying a doctor. Well, what kind of doctor? Well, us in the bookkeeping space, we're essentially taking all the nitty gritty, the daily transactions, and we're summarizing it in some very cool reports. We coach and consult on those reports as well, because like you mentioned, a lot of business owners, they may not have utilized it in the past, or maybe they started on a spreadsheet. So we try and create a connection where we provide that information to help you better understand and run your business. That's what it boils down to.
So when you say you started like in the REO, days, was that you like helping agents who were doing the REO business try to figure out kind of their numbers?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
So back in those days,
Yeah.
the agents were forking out a lot of cash and trying to get reimbursed from Fannie and Freddie and all of those different entities. And they weren't really good at tracking their money. They were just cutting checks left and right. And I unfortunately saw a lot of people lose some good amount of money because they weren't tracking it appropriately.
Yeah, I actually had a small REO account at the time, and yeah, you're right. It was fronting money,
No
and
kidding.
there was a lot of things you had to do to earn that commission. You almost had to front your money for 90 days and figure out how to have a debt collection service to go get your money back from them. So I could see where you could have been
Yeah.
super beneficial at that time. Because I remember I had a bookkeeper at that time come in for just a little bit when I had that account, and it did turn into, it was a little bit of a logistical mess behind the scenes. We get into the business because we want to sell houses, and how we get that business, when it's REOs, that was different. So, that's interesting that you brought that up, because this is actually the reason why I wanted to bring you on the show. Is I was actually talking to an agent recently who, was telling me their splits, and you said they're like back ending the math, right? I was talking to an agent about their splits, and they were saying like, oh, like I'm on a 70-30 split. And I was like, who's getting the 30? And she's like, I am. And she's the team leader. And I was instantly like, just my brain was calculating this. I'm like, I don't even know if you can, I was thinking like, I don't even know if you can stay in business on paper if you're getting 30% and the agent's getting 70%. Like, it just doesn't seem like it mathematically could even make sense. And so I like how you said, like, back ending the whole entire process. Like, if this couldn't work out on paper, like, how's it even going to work in the real world where you have gas expenses, cost of sell and things like that? So
Yeah.
why do you think,
Well, just to touch on that really quick, I have a lot of clients who do a 70-30 or an 80-20. And, when you first glance at it, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't think that's going to work. And it actually does pencil out on paper. Now, it's a different business model.
okay.
But if what we're really focusing on is profitability and making sure money gets in the bank and comes home to the family, it can and it does work as long as you understand your business model.
Okay, cool. I'm glad you said that. With this person specifically, I knew it wouldn't, but I'm glad you touched on that, because I think that's super important. Like, we do all run different businesses, but I think what you're saying is, like, as long as you're super intentional of looking at that scorecard and you know what you're trying to accomplish, like, it can work. So thanks for bringing that up. So
yeah, absolutely.
Why do you think, David, like finances, it seems like we would get into this business, right? Or any business, whether we're realtors or business owners, you'd think you'd get into the business because you're like, hey, I want to make some money, right? Why do you think we push the finances? Like, most people just push that to the side, like, oh, I don't want to worry about that. Or, like, why do you think that even comes about?
Yeah, honestly, it's fear. It's the unknown. I don't know about you, but I definitely didn't learn about money in high school or college. I didn't understand what, really making money was all about. I worked a W-2 wage for a long time. I'm sure just like many of us. And it was a brain flip to understand, oh my gosh, like, I could have an unlimited amount of cash and money if I worked hard enough and understand how the business worked. And to be honest, what I really compare it to is, real estate, doctor, dentist, whatever you want to call yourself, we're all business owners, like you mentioned. And we either become business owners or we stay as hobbyists. And there's a fine line between taking it seriously and, hopefully just making a little bit of cash to get by. Two completely different scenarios.
Where do you think realtor should start out? Like, if somebody was getting into the business, or somebody who's doing the business, it just feels like their, finances are a little bit squirrely. I mean, just from, entity, things like that. Like, what would you describe? Like, if someone was coming into the business day one, what would that path look like that you'd say, like, hey, start doing this, so you have like a framework or a foundation, and then start going and selling houses?
Yeah, great question. I'll preface this with some of my most, I'll say, wealthy and most profitable business owners that we work with today started on a spreadsheet. Okay, so not everybody jumped into the business and was like, I got this. We're ready to rock and roll. Everybody started somewhere, and most everybody, including myself, started on a spreadsheet because we didn't know any different. Today, knowing what I know now, the team has to be built. We've got to find people that can support us, and whether that look like the attorney, the business coach, the CPA, the bookkeeper, like, those are the guiding people who can take you to the next level right off the bat. From a very basic perspective, though, and when it comes to bookkeeping, it's really creating a differentiator between you as a person and your business. So getting the LLC organized first, right? It's a liability structure. There's a lot to it, but that's where, again, the attorney comes in to help you create that if you need to. From there, it's really separating your personal life from your business life, and it's 2 checking accounts or 2 savings accounts or whatever that looks like. And it sounds rudimentary, but it's the truth. If we could start moving business income and business expenses away from our personal stuff, not only are we kind of setting ourselves up for future opportunities, but now we can start analyzing the data a little bit without the extra fluff in there. When you got the kids' soccer tuition and the private school tuition and your mortgage coming out of your business's stuff, how could you possibly analyze what the business really requires in order to break even on a monthly basis? And I'll talk about this in a little bit, but that's the starting point, is really separating you as a person from your business.
Yeah, that's good advice. It's like I have realtors that ask me all the time, like, what's the one thing I could do? And I always say, like, I mean, if you were just going to go do one thing, I'd be like, have a separate bank account. I mean, that's like the most, the most simplistic thing to do. It's even like when I have clients that, get a rental property and I'm like, hey, just make sure, set up an account with that one rental property, pay the mortgage through it, pay the HOA through it, get a debit card on that or a credit card, get a debit card on that account, have the rents come into that account. I was like, treat that property and that bank account, even if you're not going to do a profit and loss and all that, like just treat that like its own. Expenses go out of that account, income comes into that account. At least you could print off statements at the end of the year and have an idea that everything on these 12 months is like the business, Exactly. So I think that's where people could go, if it's just one thing they wanted to implement, it would be that. When do you?
Yeah. And guess what? Taxes are coming around. Taxes are coming regardless, right? So if you can save yourselves a lot of angst, or 40 hours coming March or April, and just print out some bank statements for your CPA, it's a whole lot easier than sitting down and trying to highlight stuff. And, it's a disaster. So save yourself the time. Just go down to the bank and set up a new account.
Yeah, I had a realtor that I was talking to recently, and they were telling me how, it was like 3 months they were going through this tax thing. And I'm like, I would text him and ask how he was doing. He's like, I'm still going through my taxes. And I'm just thinking, like, what are you doing? So I remember getting on a Zoom with him just because I was trying to find value. And he was like, oh, well, I got to go through and categorize everything. And I got to figure out what's personal and not. I'm just like, man, go open up a separate bank account. But what's interesting is how I find a lot, and I'm talking to myself as well, like how we'll have a problem in our life, but yet we won't set up the solution for next year to be better. It's always like tax season is coming next year. So it's like, if you had a hard time this year with taxes, like you would think you would set up a few things differently logistically, so that you would say like, hey, next year this is going to be simpler. But yeah, like sometimes we'll just keep running into the same problem every single year and never say like, hey, let's just put some guidelines this year. It would be like if someone said like, wait, Christmas is December 25th this year. It's like, they're like, how did this happen? Like, when did they put it there? I'm like, that's how I feel about when people talk about tax season. I'm like, it's pretty, like your birthday, tax day, Christmas, like those are pretty much like, you can't figure out the framework of how the calendar works. Like the complexities of life are going to be great.
I'm telling you. Yeah. And, it's not poking fun, right? Because we all started somewhere, we're all busy, but in your example of this person who spent all this time, they were doing taxes instead of generating leads and making more money for the cost of outsourcing it or making the right decision now for next year, like you mentioned. So there's a lot of wasted time there.
Yeah. When do you find most of your clients start using you? I mean, I'm sure some use you like right out the gate when they get licensed, but like, when do you feel like that happens where it might be like a pain point or how does that work for you?
We find that the clients doing about $150,000 in top line revenue and more is really when they start utilizing us. Of course, that transaction count changes based on the different states and where they're located. But usually about $150,000 is where it probably starts, at least to make sense to outsource it to utilize our service. We're not the cheapest. I know I didn't set my company up to be the cheapest. We have very specific processes. So it doesn't really work below that, but probably $150,000 is where I would say to start.
Okay. And so what does somebody do when they want to start utilizing your services?
reach out to us. We're going to take an inquiry and essentially learn a little bit more about your business, ask a lot of these same questions like, have you set up a bank account? Are you set up in an LLC? And it's a two-way street. Like, you're looking for us to service you, but we also want to make sure you have the framework set up, because our system or process doesn't work if it's all over the board. It just costs you more money. It takes up our time. So we really want to make sure that the clients coming over want to be business owners and understand the financials and create better lives and make more money. Like, that's our goal as an entire core group and team and client base as well. Like, let's go rock it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is like when we talk about, like, let's say like profit and loss, because I know that's a really, like, the scorecard for me is so it's fun because it's almost gamified. So when I talk to my coach on a weekly basis, once a month, I talk to him weekly, but once a month we look at the P&L, and we're looking at it from like a lever standpoint. He's like, you can generate income, you got the cost to sell, and you got expenses. There's only so many things in this business that you can really pull. And so what do you, because I know you say that you, and I haven't utilized these services with you, but I know you said you do like some coaching or like some webinars or something like that with agents.
Right.
What does that look like when I get that you can put somebody's expenses into, and get a report. How does one read that report better? Because that's what I found out over the last few years that I always kind of joke and I say, I've got to be I got to be better at this. And I feel like I used to have a basic P&L and now it's gotten more complex. How do you, when you see those
Good
numbers,
for you, by the way.
thank you. How are you explaining that to people? What are you looking at?
Yeah, so basically, we always start with the income statement or the P&L. It's the easiest one for most people to understand. I personally believe the balance sheet, which talks about cash assets, liabilities, and equity, is far more important than the income statement. But most people generate the P&L first because they always look at the bottom line. Like, am I making money or not making money? So that's the easiest to probably understand and communicate to a new business owner. I have a video on my website, streamlinedbusinesssolutions.com, and it basically walks you through a very simple financial report. There's usually at least 2, if not 3 sections to the income statement. It's very easy to read. Initially, most people just tense up and don't want to look at it and not understand it, but it really, really is super simple to understand it and read if you just take the time to kind of get what it's telling you.
Why is the other report why do you think the other report's more important than like the income statement? I would love to hear like your opinion just from somebody who does this all the time, because I've never thought that in my head. So I would love to learn.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go down a bunny path real quick though.
That's fine.
When I personally look at the businesses that I own, I'm always making sure that my assets outweigh my liabilities. So cash in the bank, receivables, hard assets, whether they be vehicles, equipment, or whatever. Like, if I had to sell the business today, does all of that outweigh what I owe? Meaning the credit cards and if I had loans and stuff like that. I'm very debt adverse personally, but I'm not going to get into that conversation today. But if I had to sell my business or get out today, am I going to walk away with a check, or am I going to have to figure out where to get the money? So that's really what the balance sheet talks about.
Okay.
Now, at the bottom of that balance sheet, it also provides you an equity category. And what it does is it talks about the money you took out of the business. And it talks about the profitability of the income statement, because the income statement flows into the balance sheet. And this is where my bunny path starts. We talked about reverse engineering at the beginning of our conversation. I personally like to reverse engineer my business's financial statement, and I'll kind of tell you how that works. And I'll use some rough numbers, but if my household requires $10,000 a month to live off of, now that's the mortgage payment, that's new underwear, and that's kids' tuition or whatever. That's $10,000 a month. If that requires $10,000 a month, I want a life that actually is about $15,000 a month. I want to put in money to my 401k. I want to figure out how to get to Disneyland. And so now my number becomes $15,000. Well, who's responsible for paying my household? Who's responsible for paying me $15,000 a month? My business. My business is required to pay me that. So now I have to go figure out, what does my business require on a monthly basis? And I'll just use, again, simple math. We'll use $10,000. So if the business requires 10 grand, and that's lead generation, cell phone, that's possibly some rent or whatever the case may be, that's 10 grand plus my $15,000 a month at home, that's 25 grand. Now, $25,000, I'm going to basically pick a market where your average commission check is $5,000. So instead of me focusing on, I'm trying not to go to Starbucks, or I'm focusing on trying to limit my rent cost or whatever, all I'm focused on is it requires me 5 deals a month, 5 contracts, 5 cleanings, whatever it is in your world. It requires me 5 contracts a month just to break even. But I know at 5 contracts, my world is taken care of. Now, of course, I want more, right? So now I'm going to go after 6 contracts and 7 contracts. And now my focus is all generated on making sure that the revenue is coming in the door. So that's how I think of the income statement and the balance sheet, because what you don't see on the income statement is that 15 grand a month you're pulling out of your business as cash.
Okay.
Make sense?
No, it totally does. I think that I just didn't come from the angle of, I guess I didn't come from the angle of naming how I was processing this in my brain correctly. Cause like I actually teach a class like what you just did. And it's basically reverse engineering your goals. And it's kind of this, It's literally the same thing you said. And I'm like, hey, like first you got to write down, like, what does it cost for your family to live? You know, like we're not doing this for a charity. It's like, what does it cost to live? Then what does it cost to run your business? And then, and then I tell them actually add in your goals. Like if you wanted to buy a rental property, you need to have $60,000 this, to take the down payment.
Right.
It's really, I'm like, just write down everything that you have to pay, everything that you want to pay, start dividing it out, start putting some calculations in for taxes. And I'm like, you can basically, I mean, if you want to go put in the work, and I build in some of my, things that I want to do, like buy rental properties, like almost like it's an expense in my life. And I tell people, like, I think that's probably why some of that gets accomplished in my life, because I truly in my brain, I'm like, that has to be done in order to get to the end result. And so I think I process it that way. I just didn't know the technical reports, and probably just because I have a little, a smaller company that doesn't have a lot of things outside of a computer or four, and doesn't really carry any debt. So I guess I didn't look at it that way, but that was really awesome. I'm hopeful that the listener holds on to that very like dearly, because like that's so powerful when you just talk about reverse engineering. I don't know why we don't think of that more, of like we can just kind of go out there and, I mean, we can go accomplish our goals if we want to. I mean, and you're the one who tracks it all behind the scenes and helps us look at the numbers better.
Yeah. And then going back to, if you've created a separate bank account and you have the separate personal account, now if you've ever looked at your bank statement, it tells you how much money you spent in a month. It lines up the debits, right? And so your numbers are right there. So start taking an average. And the best part about that is using that 5 contracts conversation. Like, today, what is it, the 15th of September? So today if you've got 5 deals closing in October. So I'm not going to wait till October to make a shift or a decision. I know if I have a problem today, not 15 days from now. So what do I have to do 15 days from now? I either have to figure out how to pull in the revenue, get that deal closed, or I better start cutting some expenses, or hopefully I have some money saved up because I know November is going to be awesome and I'm going to have 10 deals closed. Like it's not a difficult, it's a very common sense conversation, using basic information to say, I've got a problem today, or hey, we're going to have a great month.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those P&Ls that I look at that you guys send over, I'm always just like, this is so much fun. It's literally like it's a game at this point where you're just like, you've got to, like my coach says, you got to pull some levers. It's revenue, it's cost of sale, it's expenses. You got to manage, you got to figure those ones out, and that's all you're really doing. What do you like? What are some other advice? I just want you to kind of talk about some things that you thought would be important to the listeners before we head out.
I think it's important, going back to like the team conversation, is reach out and find the professionals in the world. CPA. I think one of the most important one is an estate planning attorney, because once you've created the income, and and you're rolling and you're doing well, and now you're just managing the expenses and the revenue, and it's kind of just a game. Where's it going to go in the end? I've got 2 young daughters, and my goal is them, right? So now I'm always looking to the end, making sure that everything's organized appropriately, so that should something happen, they're very well taken care of. And so I'm reverse engineering that as well, right? Like, how do I want it to look for them? What can I do about it today? And that's where like an estate planning attorney comes in to help you organize and figure out what that might look like. So it's really finding the professionals, in my opinion, that do what they do best to guide you to the next level.
Who would you say like those 5 professionals are, or just who would you say those like what would those be?
It would be a tax preparer, number
Okay.
1. How do you set up and organize the entity? And a tax preparer or a CPA, certified public accountant, or EA, which is an enrolled agent, that person is different than a bookkeeper. Okay, 2 totally different sides of the business, but they have to work and collaborate together and be the liaison for you. So those are 2 people. A business banker, I think, is highly recommended. So take them out to lunch, get to know them. Like, you don't want to be having to run to the bank to deposit a check. You want them to come to you, and they will. So if you've got that relationship built. A business coach, for sure. The person who's going to tell you what you don't want to hear. I mean, I've had the same business coach for almost 15 years now, and I wouldn't be here without him, right? He tells me exactly what I don't want to do. And then the attorney. So those are 5, 6 different people that I think the relationship could be built with over time. It's not, go out and Google it and find somebody today. It's going to take a little time to make sure you guys click together.
Yeah, what I like what you were just saying is like having those people around you. It's interesting how like success leaves clues. When I go talk to the people who are doing pretty well selling real estate, they almost all say the same thing. They've got a lawyer, they've got a banker, they've got a coach, they got a CPA, they got a bookkeeper. So I'm like, it's interesting to me how like the people who are succeeding at a high level in this industry all have that network of people around them helping them. And then you've got others that you sometimes aren't succeeding, or they just get into a lot of, trouble, it seems like, where they're just always, running around trying to figure out things outside of selling homes. But yeah, I think the common denominator or success leaves clues is like have that network around you. I'm actually thankful that I met some people, some of them that we know just through masterminds lately, that you realize like, hey, if you just go to those masterminds and learn from these people, you don't even have to really go build those relationships or find them, I should say. You just like what we did. It was plug and play. It was someone that I trusted said, hey, if you're having this problem, go talk to David. I called you up. I was actually doing QuickBooks, like I'm actually kind of that person that can kind of manage my own bookkeeping at a very, very small level. So mine went from spreadsheets to my own QuickBooks account. I did all my own bookkeeping, and I didn't even import in. I didn't want to import in because I wanted to fill the expense by me spending 30 minutes importing it, or myself putting it into from my bank account to QuickBooks. I'd look at my own little report, and like I said, then it just got complex, and I hired you. And it's just the one thing that I'm learning now is, and we talked about this the other day when we were on the phone, but now I'm learning how to be I'm trying to learn how to be on like that 30-day delay. Because we get, obviously you guys can't be like up to real time. So like that 30-day delay, there are some, can you help me out with that? Because I think sometimes the listeners, I don't ever want them to think I have this all figured out. Like I have challenges in my life. So I've had to build I built a spreadsheet for the interim of like that 30-day lag on a P&L. Is there a way that I'm looking at this wrong, or should I be able to see all these metrics without having to do that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And of course, we because we don't do things on a day-to-day, it's always after the month closes.
Yeah.
There is a delay. And we guarantee the financials by the 22nd of the following month, which honestly is a really good time frame compared to a lot of companies. But if I can teach you, or if you want to take the time to learn those break-even numbers, like I mentioned, now I'm just checking in. on the 15th or the 20th of the prior month to say, we could have done a little bit better here. you're still getting the information 12 times a year. It's just the 15th, and it's not the first. But again, my focus as a business owner is on, these are my averages. This is what I know that's coming up. For all of the clients out there, or business owners, I should say, that have biweekly payroll for their staff. Like it's no surprise, just like Christmas and tax day, that twice a year you have 3 payroll periods in a month. Well, if your average payroll is $10,000, you better figure out that 2 months out of the year is going to cost you 30 grand instead of 20 grand, right? So these are just things that you calendar and you understand. And if you pay attention to your break-even numbers and the historical data, chances are it's going to happen again. And closing those 5 deals in the example, now you're running your business and you're checking in with your financial statement. And unless there's a really big instance, like you're going to go after some big lead gen costs, that's when you start looking at the details. Not that it's not important, don't get me wrong, but that's how I try and, get clients to work with the time frame of receiving financials after the close of the month.
Yeah, that's what my coach told me. My coach told me, he's like, hey, just your average of your expenses. Like there's an average every single month. There's an average of what the expenses are with our payroll that we have to our employees and to myself. And he's like, it's just basically, you're looking at your pending sheet of what's coming into the company. You're looking at your average expenses. I mean, it's actually as simple as that. I think sometimes I did my stuff for so long that I feel like I sometimes, and my coach has told me this as well. Like, it's like, sometimes you did your finances for so long, for 15 years, that you sometimes are just stepping on your own self because you like to get involved with it, because you were so used to being involved with it. Now that it's leveraged out, certain things I probably don't even need to do, but we all have our quirks. And so I sit there sometimes and I'm like, I'm trying to do some type of bookkeeping because I was so used to doing it. And then I'm like, wait, I don't really think I need to do anything. Like, you just look at what's coming in, what's the average expenses going to be for next month. And, obviously there's a healthy amount of money in a bank account sitting there. Like, there shouldn't be no complexities here. I'm glad you brought up payroll, because I didn't even think to talk about that. Cause like, that's something where anybody who has a team and employees, like you guys do my payroll for me. I don't even know how I would have pulled that off without why do people not call you if they have payroll? I'm like, I don't even know where I would have started with that. Like, what am I going to cut? Am I going to like start adding up stuff and cutting checks? I'd forget that they would be texting me and be like, hey Bowers, we kind of need paid today. I'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, payroll is its own beast. It really, really is. Talk about another professional, right? Where we utilize systems that work. We outsource everything to ADP. We manage it, but we use their tools behind the scenes. I can do payroll in my sleep, and I still outsource it to ADP, because I don't want to be responsible for filing the forms appropriately, paying the taxes on time, like calculating everything. Like, that's a lot of work. And for the $100, $150 a month, whatever it costs, I'll pay it all day long, because guess what I'm not doing every single day? Payroll. It takes me 5 minutes, call in payroll, and I'm done. My employees are happy, they're paid on time, and now I'm running my business, not focusing on the minutia of payroll. I will tell you, because this comes up a lot, transferring money from your business account to your personal account is not payroll. W-2 wages is payroll, withholding Social Security, federal taxes, Medicare, state taxes, sometimes local. Like, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of forms that have to be filed monthly and quarterly. Trust me, outsource payroll. It is probably some of the best money you could spend if you have employees, or if your tax structure for your business is set up as an S corporation.
Okay. Yeah. So when you say you outsource payroll, what do you guys do then for the payroll? Because I know I get an email from your company that says, hey, Chris, this is what payroll is. Do you approve it? And I send them. It's usually like 4:30 in the morning. I get up, I just push approve, and then we're good to go. So is that just like you guys have somebody who's, because I know you said you outsource it. So what does that mean? Because I know I pay you guys to do it, and it gets done. So, and it's lovely.
Yep. Yeah. So no, I have payroll specialists designated at Streamlined Business Solutions. They are our employees.
Got it.
But on the back end, we utilize the system of ADP.
Understood.
There's lots of reasons for it. Number one, it's easy for you, for the client. You didn't even know, right? But on the back end, they're filing all the forms, year-end W-2s, W-3s, like they take care of everything. And then lastly, the reason we use that is because it helps simplify my bookkeeping process. I have access to the payroll journals. I can break down gross to net payroll wages. Like I don't have to call you and say, Chris, hey, give me the payroll report so I can finish up your income statement. I have direct access to it. It makes it super, super easy. So there's a lot of reasons why we have the systems that we do because it's very fluid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm like, there's some of the stuff that I have people ask me for help on, like realtors or business owners, and I have to tell them, I'm like, hey, I don't know. I mean, I've been doing this since I was 22, and I had a business when I was 16. I'm like, I just feel like I just always been dependent on, I just tell them like, I'm not gonna force sell my own like life, like like that's what that means to me. Like if I'm doing my own payroll and stuff, I'm like, am I not valuing that someone out there has a better skill than me to do that? So I'm like, I don't want to be the guy who's like, no, I could probably do this better than David, So, and I get it. Everybody's got finances they're trying to control and things like that. But I mean, it's definitely something where you want to get to a point where you get people around you quickly. And I think what's also important to note is we look at some of these vendors in our life or professionals, and, we look at it like an expense. And I'm like, if you find the right people like your company and some other, other professionals in my life, like they're an asset. Like they're not an expense in my life. Like I don't look at that and say like, that's an expense. I mean, maybe for tax reasons, but like for me, I'm looking at it like, hey, they provide, advice. Sometimes they're telling me what I'm not even like, I don't even know. And they're saving me money by looking at my stuff and just looking at this from a different angle. The same as if you needed to sell your house, you could probably go on Zillow and kind of get like a ballpark within 40 to 50,000 what your home's worth, but you're probably going to go hire someone skilled to say like, I need you to dial this down and really do what you do best.
Exactly. Just because I can use EMLS doesn't make me a great real estate agent, right? Like, I mean, I can play around all day long, but I'm not going to list my own house. It's just not my skill.
Yeah. Well, man, what as we exit out of here, what are some last words? How can people get in contact with you if they want to use your services? Just any last advice for people?
Yeah, I would say this is, business is a journey, right? It's my business coach always says, you're never going to arrive. And so we're always focused on the next big thing, client values and stuff like that. And that's just internally here at our company. But I assume it's the same for a lot. How do we service more clients? How do we gain more revenue? How do we grow this thing and help? Our largest goal is financial literacy. Like it's just not there. So my dream as a business owner is to help people run better businesses. I think it just supports so many families and so many businesses out there that that's where I'd like to see it go. So for us, StreamlinedBusinessSolutions.com. I'm sure you can put my contact information if you want, but feel free to reach out, and there's no cost to a consultation. Happy to walk through your business structure and say, yeah, we're a good fit. Maybe we're not a good fit. Talk to us next year. But again, with the goal of helping financial literacy, like ask me anything you want. I guarantee you there's nothing you can ask me or tell me that I haven't heard before. Taxes owed from, haven't filed taxes in 5-10 years. Like it's legit. And it's unfortunate for some people, but there is a way out, right? There's structures and processes in place that can help you get out of the minutia. So don't be afraid to ask the questions. Somebody's already been there.
Yeah, one of my coaches once said, standing on the scale lets you know your weight now, and it gives you your scorecard so that you can know whether you're improving or getting worse. And so I like what you just said right there, because like there are people that are in challenges, and it's like, don't just keep running from the challenge. It's like, call someone who has heard it before and can guide you out of it. Because I've run into a lot of people that it's almost like it's so far down the negative that it's almost like, let's just hide from it. And I'm like, no, like, let's go talk to someone who's a professional at this. And, that's the person that you need to go to. They're going to get you out of this. They've probably seen, and they always think it's like a rare conversation they're going to have with you. Like, and I'm like, no, like it's even like with my clients, they'll tell me the situation. Like, you've probably never heard this before. And I'm like, I've heard that one probably 6 times last week. So, I'm like, we're really not living in such rare zone. A lot of people are going through the same challenges. Well,
100%. And there's no judgment there. Like some clients are like, I don't want you to see how much money I have in the bank account. So it's a couple of zeros. Like I deal with numbers all day long. It doesn't excite me to see $1 million. It doesn't excite me to see a negative 10,000. Like it's just a number to us. There's no judgment. And if you need the help, then, chances are we can guide you out of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have your contact information in the show notes. I know you keep track of my stuff for my real estate company that I own. You also do my rental properties that I own. You guys manage that. God bless you guys. Cause that one I feel like is just a chore. So, but I'm so thankful for you guys. And yeah, I really appreciate your time today, man.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, David.